With that, welcome you inside this edition of Big Ten Today. Rick Pizzo alongside Sammy Netling. Big Ten softball tournament gets underway Wednesday in Iowa City. Top 4 seeds will start their tournaments on Thursday. Take me back. The player's perspective. What's this day like as you get ready for a really unique tournament? Some teams know they're in regardless because they could get the at-large invitation. Others know they have to go through this single elimination bracket and win it all to get the auto bid.
Yeah, it's definitely a different mindset depending on kind of where you're sitting on that spectrum, but it's just so fun, right? You truly feel like a new page has turned and you get to press the reset button. No matter how you finish the regular season, whether you were peaking towards the end or whether you may have stumbled in your final series. And so it's just so fun. It's May, we talk about it's mayhem, the road to Oklahoma City. It starts tomorrow. And I'm so excited to see these athletes. It's been an interesting year for Big Ten softball, and I truly think, last tournament it was all chalk, right, in 2023. And so I don't think we're going to see that this year. I do think we're going to see some upsets just based on how the final standings rounded out, and I just can't wait to see it.
We will get to those top 4 seeds, including number 1 overall seed Northwestern, in just a bit. The big story shows you this year's Big Ten softball tournament presented by DirecTV and the bracket, which does begin Wednesday in Iowa City. You see the 4 first-round matchups. Those are listed chronologically from top to bottom, and then the 4 teams which earned first-round byes by being the top 4 seeds: Northwestern, Nebraska, Michigan, and Rutgers. But our focus first, the games that we will see on Wednesday. And let's work time-wise, starting with the very first game. First pitch from Iowa City will match up an in-state rivalry between Purdue and Indiana. This is a really dangerous Indiana team, an Indiana team that forced Northwestern to go to the final day of the regular season by beating the Wildcats at least once in this past weekend series.
Yeah, and a Hoosier team that's looking for some revenge against their in-state rivalry because the Boilermakers took one in the doubleheader regular season series. And so I agree. I think this is a great matchup. I think, you have 2 programs that are really kind of in opposite ends of the spectrum. You've had Indiana that continues to peak, right, coming off of such a strong 2023 season. Then you have this Purdue team, right, under a new coach and coach in West Lafayette, and just a complete turnaround, right? They won 6 Big Ten games last year. They failed to make the Big Ten tournament, and now they're sitting at a 9 seed, and really has done a good job of turning things around there for the Boilermakers.
What about Indiana, though, Sammy? Because they're one of those teams, yes, they had all those expectations after such a great season a year ago. It wasn't exactly, I think, the start that they were searching for after last year. But now you suddenly look at the final record. They're 20 games above 500. They come in, I would argue, as an underseeded 8 seed. And they do have the chance, if they were to win this game against Purdue, then you get Northwestern right away, just 4 days after you saw them on Sunday here in Evanston.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, this Hoosier team did such a good job in non-conference play of really banking some of those wins. They were so tough early on, and they did stumble in Big Ten play. And I think it really comes down to the arms in the circle, right? That they've had some personnel issues in that department. They have 2 arms that are no longer with the team. They suffered an injury in Sophie Kleiman in the Saturday game against Northwestern. So I'm really curious of, is she going to be able to go this week, or is it going to fall on Brianna Copeland? Copeland threw 17 innings in 3 games.
You've talked a lot about her usage this year and whether you're concerned that at this point in the year it could be an issue for the Hoosiers.
Absolutely, and not because. Don't get me wrong, Copeland is a freak athlete. She is arguably the best athlete in the entire conference, just in terms of top to bottom her skill set. But that takes a toll in a 50-plus game season, especially walking into a single game elimination format. She is going to have to go. They cannot afford any mistakes out of the jump. And this is a Purdue Boilermaker team that feels like they can, start some rallies against them. This is an offense that it feels very similar in ways to the Hoosiers because they have a ton of speed on the base pass. They're second to the Hoosiers in stolen bases this year, but they do it in different fashions, right? They're more, straight steals. They don't do a lot of set plays, etc. But they've got some speed that can really provide some chaos and havoc on the base pass. And so, I think if you're a Hoosier team, you're fighting for a postseason bid, right? There's talk that they're in, but you never know. You never want to leave your fate up to the selection committee. And so I think the Hoosiers are going to be hungry and ready to go. But I'm excited for that first match.
That's a great way to get things started. That is the noon Eastern game. You can see it right here on the Big Ten Network. First game of the Big Ten tournament presented by DirecTV comes your way on Wednesday from Iowa City. Second game pits Illinois and Minnesota. Another interesting first-round matchup. When you look at these teams, Illinois is well under 500. Minnesota just a couple of games above. They're separated by 7 lines in the seeding. I look at the stats, I look at the talent. I'm not quite sure there's as much separation in talent as there actually is in the seeding heading into this tournament.
I agree. I think this Illini team in particular, we just haven't seen their true potential, specifically on the offensive side of the ball.
Agreed.
They can be dangerous 100%. And, it starts with Kelly Riono at the top. She is their senior leader. She continues to, get the ball rolling. But for me in this matchup in particular, it's all about the Illini pitching. Earlier in the regular season, they faced the Gophers. They got swept at the hands of the Gophers, and Minnesota played lights out. They hit the crap out of the ball in that opening series, and specifically Jess Oakland. They didn't have a game plan for her. She hit 4 home runs in that series against the Illini. So I'm really interested to see, it's so tough to beat a team, no matter what the matchup is, 4 games in a row. And so I'm very curious, what is their game plan specifically against Oakland? You have to put the bat in someone else's hand, even from the first inning. I think if you feel
now, what
like
is the game plan? We're going to talk more about Jess Oakland lately, but what is the game plan, especially if somebody's on base when she comes to the plate? Do you just basically pitch around her the entire time?
I mean, and I asked Coach Perry about this early in the year, how they were going to play that matchup. But, she says we're going to take it based on the situation, right? If you have a runner on first and you're forced to pitch to her, great. You have to execute specifically on the corners. You cannot leave anything over the plate, because Oakland, she's not a mistake hitter. She hits pitchers' pitches so well. And so I think, it's keeping the ball belt low and changing speeds as much as you can. But if you do have the open base, I think you take her out of the equation completely.
455, 19 homers, 56 RBI already this year for Jess Oakland. Obviously, your postseason stats count toward your season stats as well. So the slugger has a chance to improve on those numbers in Iowa City. Probably a situation where both teams, certainly Illinois, but Minnesota as well, has to run the table to get the auto bid if they want to get into the NCAAs.
Yeah, absolutely. And this team, this offense they're so streaky at times. They'll go on a hot streak, right? We saw them win 6 conference games in a row at one point, and they can be dangerous, but there's too much inconsistency in the circle right now, right? Obviously, they graduate Autumn Pease, the 2023 Big Ten Pitcher of the Year, and they've had some key pieces, right, that have executed in a single game format, right? Bree Enter has become sort of their definitive day 1 starter in a 3-day series, but there's still just too much inconsistency there, and that's why I feel like they are on the outside looking in right now of the NCAA field of 64 picture.
So the third of 4 first-round games to get started in Iowa City on Wednesday, Big Ten softball tournament bracket, Maryland and Penn State. Penn State, 17 games above 500. They're the 7 seed. This is a team that has shown that they can beat pretty much anybody. Neutral field. I happen to like their chances. As a 7, they're a team that the way that the bracket is set up, I think they can make a run. Wouldn't be surprised at all to see them in the semis.
Absolutely. Almost, they remind me, I don't know which is more of a lower seed, in my opinion, with the Hoosiers and Penn State, because they have been so tough this year. Obviously, they have the incredible freshman in Bridget Namath. She is a top 25 National Freshman of the Year finalist, and she has been really stellar for them in the circle. This matchup, to me, right, the Illinois-Minnesota matchup is all about offense. This one is all about pitching, because it's not just Namath, but it's also Courtney Weish on the other side in Maryland's circle. And so, I looked at their regular season series, 2-1, Penn State took it, but the Weish-Namath matchups in Game 1 and Game 3 both went to extra innings, right? It was a true pitcher's duel. One ace got, walked away with a single win in that series. And so now we get round 3, and I can't wait to see it. Courtney Weish, I think, is one of the more underrated names this year, just because of the win-loss column for the Terps this year. But she is a flamethrower. She has such a high K presence. She had 19 strikeouts in one game against the Nittany Lions and 17 in the third game, right? She can be so dominant and just completely change that part of the game for the Nittany Lions. But this Penn State team, they are hungry, right? They came into this season with one goal, one mission, and that was making the postseason. And they have put themselves in an incredible position to do so. I know they've stumbled sort of the last couple of weeks in conference play. I do think some teams specifically in a 3-game series are starting to pick up a few things against Namath, but I really, really like their chances, specifically, again, single game elimination format. Anything can happen. I'm excited to see how does this team respond to having their postseason fate in their own hands this week.
You expect a low-scoring game. We assume that those two will be inside the circle on Wednesday.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the regular season, it was 2-1, 1-0 ball games. I mean, these are just two of the best arms in the conference, and so it's going to be about who can execute situational hitting when you get base runners on.
Yeah, of course. If Penn State's going to make it to the semis, they not only have to beat Maryland, but I believe that means they would have Michigan in the quarterfinals, a Michigan team that won 14 straight before losing the final 2 games of the regular season, helping Northwestern get that top overall seed. But before we get to Thursday's matchup, one final game to touch on in Wednesday's first round. That is Wisconsin and Ohio State. Buckeyes are the 6th seed. They're 10-12 games over 500. It has been a rough go this year for the Badgers. Certainly not what they expected to be 19-30 heading into the tournament. Have to think if Ohio State plays its best game, the Buckeyes feel really good about their chances of moving on.
I do, because, this is a different Buckeyes team than when they faced the Badgers earlier in the season, right? The Badgers took that series 2-1, but the Buckeyes went on to win every other Big Ten series since then, including a monumental one over the Wolverines in Ann Arbor this past weekend. I really feel like the Buckeyes have turned a corner, specifically in the circle. We always know the Buckeyes are gonna hit the ball, right? They have a stacked lineup, one of the most potent offenses in the entire conference, but I really think Ruck and Smith have done a good job of shoring up the free passes and really just spinning the ball through the zone, trusting their stuff. Smith came into the season as the definitive ace and struggled a little bit out of the gate. Ruck took, more starts than I was expecting, specifically in conference play, but Allison Smith has been really, really tough down the jump, and I do think that this matchup favors the Buckeyes right now.
Now, you talk about confidence. You have to believe in yourself when you go into these situations. Single elimination, let's say you get down 2 or 3-0. Confidence is such a huge factor. Ohio State right now has to be flying high. We talked about that late season run by Michigan. Buckeyes lose on Friday and they come right back and win Saturday, Sunday games. That gives you such a push heading into this kind of tournament.
And especially the way that they did it against arguably the deepest and most dangerous bullpen in the conference in the Michigan Wolverines, right? They did it against Lauren Durkowski. They did it against Aaron Hayne. And this offense, I really felt like this weekend in particular, you saw just the depth of it, right? It was Epley in the 8-hole getting 2 home runs in a game, right? They just really have home run, extra base hit potential 1 through 9. And so hitting is all about confidence, right? And hitting is contagious. And so right now, I do think the Buckeyes are feeling that confidence and riding that wave into postseason.
That happens when you're 11-2 in your last 13. Just got to find a way. When you get into single elimination, it is all about surviving and advancing. More softball storylines still to come. Sammy, on what does stand in front of the top 4 seeds and whether we're likely to see upset Central or, like a year ago, chalk from start to finish. But first, the coach of the regular season champs joins us. Northwestern's Kate Drohan talking about the Wildcat consistency and how underclassmen put the Cats over the top. What's up, Coach? Northwestern claimed its 3rd straight regular season softball title on the final day of the regular season. Cats win over Indiana, helping NU fight off a Michigan team which had won 14 straight in late April and early May. That means NU will once again be the top seed in this week's Big Ten tournament, earning a first-round bye before opening up their postseason on Thursday in Iowa City. And it's time for the big interview as we are joined by Northwestern head coach Kate Drohan. Kate, 3 in a row is really impressive, but I'm struck by a different stat. In each of the last 2 years, your team has gone undefeated in Big Ten series play, haven't lost a single series. So what's the key to that level of consistency?
I think the key to that consistency is the depth of our pitching staff and how hard our team works over the course of that series to really understand how to make adjustments and understand how to be tough as you finish that final game on Sunday. But this has been a really fun team to coach, and they're really hungry to learn more. So we're excited.
Now, even with that level of consistency and the play and that pitching staff, it goes down to the final day of the regular season. You guys are doing what you're supposed to do, but then Michigan goes on this massive run, winning 14 straight. What was the team's mindset as it woke up on Sunday morning, kind of knowing what was at stake?
Well, our mindset going into the week was we needed to work on our game, on our approach, on what we were going to do as a team. And we try to keep as narrow a focus as we could and not really think about what was happening in Ann Arbor, because Michigan has been playing some really good softball. You know, they've been really, really tough and really consistent. So we really asked the team to focus on ourselves. Sunday morning, we met as a team. We did some video, and it was all about how we could just be as free and as physical as we could in the moment.
And did you see exactly that?
Yeah, I like the way our team started the day. You know, Indiana got a couple runs early. We were able to get one back. And just the way we competed was very much Northwestern softball on brand. I think our fans had a lot to do with it. And I think our team was just really focused on the moment, playing one pitch at a time.
And this is with a fairly young roster, at least in terms of classification and age. I know a lot of these sophomores and the first years as well have plenty of experience at this point in the season. But I want to start with those sophomores. And one of the three, Kansas Robinson, she's your team leader in most offensive categories. How have you seen her evolve and grow over the last couple of years to become one of the most dangerous offensive players, not just in this conference, but maybe in the country?
She's really dynamic. You know, she hits for power. She's got great plate coverage. But what we saw, especially towards the middle of the Big Ten season, was she was playing a really unselfish brand of softball. So when they wanted to pitch around her and nibble, she would take the walk. And that just generated a lot of bases. And in turn, Kelsey Nader then stepped up and had a monster Big Ten season. And the combination of the two of them at the top of the order really set the tone for us.
Yeah, Kelsey, also a sophomore, typically hits right behind Kansas in that number 2 hole. What does it do for the rest of your offense, those who bat behind Angela Zidak, Hannah Katie, Emma Ray, and others, to have those two at the top of the lineup specifically?
Well, it's great. And also their personality around the game. You know, they're really fiery, very emotional players. So our team loves that. But what it does is it simplifies the game for everyone else. So no one in our lineup really feels like they have to do it, or even that they have to do it on their own. So that's the kind of approach that I think really makes our lineup and our offense go right now. But I'll tell you, their specific development, you put Bridget Donahue in that category as well, especially Bridget's defense. She's been so tough with a lot of drop ball pitchers on the mound. Our staff worked really hard on their development, and Carol and Tony and Michelle, everyone in our staff, just from the very beginning of the fall, they're like, okay, what can we do each day to just get them a little bit tougher, a little bit better, work on their backhand. So their focus was really narrow, and the impact that had on the development of their complete game really showed here late in the season.
So that sophomore class is outstanding. You have 8 first years, and I want to focus on Emma Ray because this is a rarity. You very rarely see a first-year player, especially at that position at catcher, be so consistent, and she has started all but one game, I believe, at that spot throughout the course of the year. She's been phenomenal defensively. She's been really good offensively. How impressed have you been, and what maybe, if anything, has surprised you at this point in your career about what she's been able to do?
Oh, man. So Emma Ray, her consistency and her ability to play that position with such physicality, which is so demanding, especially with, again, like I said, so many drop ball pitchers on the mound. She's been so tough. And then to have the offensive production that she's had, the way she's controlled the run game for opponents, just so many different elements of her game that really it's rare to see that in a freshman with that kind of poise. But I think Emma Ray's superpower is the joy she plays the game with. She loves winning. She loves it when her teammates have success. And when you have that kind of player behind the plate, it really elevates the play of every single person in our dugout.
I love that. Does everybody on your team have a superpower?
Yes, everyone has a superpower, and that's what I think is really remarkable about our team this year. Everyone is in charge of winning, and I think the person who I have to talk about the most is Lauren Boyd, who is our on paper, our best returning pitcher who's redshirting this year, and the impact that she's had on our game, the impact she's had on her teammates has just been really something I've never seen before. It's been really, really amazing.
Yeah, and so with Lauren redshirting, obviously there was a hole to fill inside the circle. In steps Ashley Miller, who has done more than that. I mean, she's been lights out, leading the team, leading the conference in almost every major statistical pitching category. Her opponent's batting average is almost the exact same as Danielle Williams's was when she won All-American honors in 2019. Can you describe in a short segment here what exactly she's meant to your team this year?
She's been awesome, and the team embraced her from the beginning. She's an incredible student, really great success at Kellogg, but she's just pounded the strike zone. And the way she's fed our defense, the way she's approached her game and how she's prepared for games, it's been really great. It's been really fun to coach her and to see her success. But our team just loves playing behind her.
This is the first three-peat for the program in 35 years. I think we're about the same vintage. So you, like me, the last time that happened, 87, we were probably like middle school-ish. What's it like now? Because you're going to be talked about in the same vein as the legendary Sharon Drysdale, who was the coach of that team when they won 3 in a row.
Well, we've heard from a lot of players who are on those teams, and they feel great pride in us doing that again. So we're just so blessed that we had Drysdale at the field this weekend. The connection over this 40-year span and the support and the mentoring that we have from our players and Drysdale with me, I think it's a real strength within our program.
What about those expectations, Kate? Because now I think every year, every season, people expect Northwestern to be at the top of the regular season. They expect you guys to be part of the Women's College World Series. That's a good thing, but it obviously adds some pressure as well, does it not?
Well, what I think you want those expectations, right? You want to build a program that has those kinds of standards. And I think it's our job as coaches to simply take it one day at a time and how can we get a little bit better. And I think that's really the story of this team. We preached patience really early on. We preached the process, and we knew, and we gave this team permission to have their own identity. And there were a lot of questions coming into the year, but I think they did a great job of saying, hey, this is how we're going to play. Here are the unique characteristics of this year's team. And I think that allowed them to step on the field with an awful lot of confidence.
So the expectations now heading into the Big Ten tournament, and I know you believe this, are that you will face, regardless of who you face on the run that you hope to make, they're going to be really quality teams. You could face the Indiana team you just saw at the end of the regular season. We already discussed Michigan. Nebraska's been solid. Rutgers has had a tremendous year. What do you think about this bracket, and what are you expecting from the quality of play in Iowa City?
Oh, I think it's going to be really tough. I think it's going to be really competitive. You mentioned Rutgers. I just think their offensive punch is really good, and same with Nebraska. So what we're saying to our team is just one game at a time, and really focusing on making our game a little bit stronger. And regardless of our opponent, we just have to go out there and play our best ball.
Kate Drohan and the Wildcats set to take on either Purdue or Indiana, second round of the Big Ten tournament. Northwestern gets its postseason started on Thursday after a Wednesday first-round bye. Kate, as always, we appreciate the time. Congrats on the regular season championship, and best of luck to you and the team in the tourney.
Thanks, Rick. Go Cats.
Time to switch gears, serve up some men's volleyball next. UCLA head man John Speraw joining us just days after the Bruins went back-to-back, claiming the program's 21st national championship. Today's big stat focused on UCLA men's volleyball, the winningest program in the sport's history by a long margin. Bruins just won their 21st national championship over the weekend, second straight under head coach John Speraw, who, by the way, also led UC Irvine to 3 of those 4 national championships that you see on that board. And we are excited to welcome Coach Speraw into the program for the very first time, just days after winning the national championship. John, we truly appreciate you being with us, and first and foremost, congrats to you on the team and all you accomplished this season.
Thanks. Really proud of the men. It was a great season, and obviously I love looking at that board, that leaderboard right there.
Every championship team has its own personality. Every championship season is special for its own reason. What made this one unique?
I think because this one was such a challenge, we won the year before and returned a large number of players, and I think the expectations were really high. But early in the season, we had some injuries. We had some players come back after playing with the national team that were a little beat up. We didn't have a great fall, and then we lost a couple players in key positions, and so we needed to put some pieces together and get some young guys on the court. It ended up not meeting, I think, everybody's early expectations for how the season was going to go, and it wasn't very smooth. So I think for us to weather that period of time, to make sure we stayed together as a group, come and play our best volleyball at the end of the year, I think is what made it so special.
I believe it was 15 of the last 16 matches, including, of course, the national championship win over Long Beach. Let's get into the match itself. First set, you hold the Beach to just 107 hitting. So early on, what was working really well from a block and defensive standpoint?
Both. I think the serving, the block, the D. What was really notable about that first set is we went down early. I took my last time out at 12-9. And so we went through the whole back half of that set, really putting a lot of pressure on that team. Without having any more timeouts, it was just up to the guys on the court. And I think that was a really pivotal moment of the volleyball match.
Set two, a lot more efficient offense from your team. You hit 374 in the second. You're in control pretty much the entire set. So what was working better from the offensive setting and hitting perspectives in set number two?
Yeah, early on in that set, we got a nice lead because we were putting so much service pressure on them. Ito, our opposite, who had such a great final the year before, did not have the same kind of offensive effort, but he found ways to contribute. He was doing it from the service line in that set. So we got that nice big cushion and held on to it for the end of the second set. But I think our service pressure put so much pressure on them. We were getting a lot of balls back in perfect pass situations and putting those down. And
set three goes back and forth to extras. You actually have a championship point, but Long Beach comes back to win that set 29-27. I know anyone that's ever been in that position, regardless of how much confidence you have, you're like, why couldn't we close it out when we had the chance? So what was the message to the team as you got ready to head into the fourth? You're exactly right. Usually you end up in those situations where you have a swing for the match and it doesn't work out. The other team has this big lift that they can carry into the fourth set. I really did have a lot of trust in our guys to be able to weather that emotionally, and they did. And so I didn't lose my confidence, but we've all been there long enough to know that that easily could have ended up being a fifth set. Gosh, that swing too. Godbold for Long Beach had this swing for the match, and it could have been for the match, and it went right through our blockers' hands. I mean, right through. We almost stuffed that thing to win it in the third set. So it was a little bit of a heartbreak, but our guys did such a good job of being poised in that moment and then coming back. And then Long Beach did have some momentum into the fourth set and just hang in there, and then making some plays at the end. And a huge play. Ethan Champlin comes up with a great dig on championship point in the back corner. It eventually leads to a Beach error. What's that moment like to know that, at least for this season, there are no more worlds in men's college volleyball for your team to conquer? It was almost hard to believe, Rick. I was so present in that moment, and I was just so point by point. And in the middle of that set, it didn't look very good. I really felt like we were keeping up, but just barely. I could tell Ito was tiring out, Ethan was tiring out. I was already kind of thinking about, okay, if this goes 5, what kind of roster changes do I need to make? And then I put in Zach Rama, and he's a sophomore outside hitter for us. I just felt like we needed a little emotional lift at that moment in time. And Zach came in and made a few plays that were just critical for us. He put the ball on the floor. And right there at the very end, we just made enough points, like after 20. And so right up to about 20, it was nobody knew what was going to happen. And then bam, 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 it was over. It was a little hard to believe because I was just so point by point. That last ball went out of bounds. I could hardly believe it. I was so thrilled. So, yeah, now no more worlds to conquer, like you said. I mean, these guys have just done an amazing job for the program, winning this senior class, winning 2, and putting this program back on top after a long number of too many years where UCLA hadn't been, and finally we were able to accomplish that goal. I had to win that final inside Walter Pyramid. Long Beach had won 27 straight there. Now, I'm not sure when you get to the tournament if it is still officially considered a home match or not, but still, they're more familiar, obviously, with that spot than you are. What was the atmosphere like in there? I'm sure there was plenty of UCLA support as well.
There was, but it was a home match for them. I think they had a big crowd. They've done a great job of building up their fan base down there. When we went down there during the regular season, it was sold out. I know there was even a secondary ticket market that you don't usually see in men's volleyball. I think the sport is gaining increased popularity. I think you've seen that on the women's side too. I think volleyball in general in the United States is really a growing sport. For the boys and the men, it's been the fastest growing sport in America for the last 10 years. So you're starting to see this fan base that's really starting to show up, and certainly they had their fans, and the Bruins came out and supported too, and they gave it their best. You know, they knew they were outnumbered, so we really heard them. It made a huge difference for us.
One guy who was certainly cheering for you, who was in attendance, former coach Al Skates, 50 years, 19 national championships, now 84 years old, there to watch. What's your relationship like with Al, obviously the man who coached you, and what does he mean to you and to the career that you've embarked on, taking over as coach?
Oh, hard to summarize. He's meant so much to me. Obviously, I played for him in my young coaching career, coached for him. So overall, I spent 12 years at UCLA before I left with my own head coaching opportunity and was gone for a decade. But during that whole period of time, he was so influential for me in terms of helping me develop my own skill set as a coach. He was such a mentor to me. I mean, there's so many stories that I have that I could tell about how he impacted my view on integrity and leadership and these really important topics that we all discuss in coaching. We're still really good friends. I said in the press conference after, I think he was coaching that program for 50 years. And so when you turn that over, that's really hard to turn that over. And I think he was able to do that. He's done it in such a classy way. He's just been so supportive to me. He has so much trust in me, and he's still there. He sends me texts. We talk a lot. He's a good friend now. So I just couldn't say enough about what Al Skates has meant to me personally, but obviously to the program. You see, the 21 up there, and 19 of those are his, and we all know that. We all have great respect and gratitude for Al Skates.
Now, John, most coaches who lead their team to a national title in any sport get a little bit of time to sit back, soak it all in, relax, enjoy it. That's not the case for you. You're also the U.S. national team head coach. You're getting ready for this summer in Paris. I understand you're about to change out of your UCLA shirt and into your Team USA shirt. How do you balance all this?
With an amazing wife. That's how you balance. I have two young girls, Brooklyn and Haley. They're 8 and 7. My wife, Michelle, just runs the ship, allows me to really be external and focus on the task at hand. I'm just so grateful that I have these opportunities to do that. I'm coaching at UCLA, which is, that's got to be the best job in the world. And then I'm coaching Team USA, which has to be the best job in the world. And I have both. Sometimes it's hard to imagine how this all happened to me. To balance it requires great staff too. I have amazing staff at UCLA and amazing staff at Team USA, supportive infrastructure in both places. UCLA athletics has been tremendously supportive of all Olympic sports, and certainly me personally, to have the opportunity to go and compete in Olympic Games and coach the national team during the summers, I couldn't do it without UCLA support. And so it's just about having a great group dynamic around me. And when you're running large organizations, you got to have great support. And I certainly do.
And John, a lot of those folks will be getting ready for the move to the Big Ten this summer. You obviously coach a program in a sport that right now is not currently sanctioned as a Big Ten conference sport, but there will be changes in the way that the program operates, I'm sure, perhaps recruiting or other things that happen. How does the move from one conference to another affect your program specifically?
Oh, I think it affects the whole department. I think the support you get from the Big Ten and the excitement we have about moving to the Big Ten conference, I think builds an energy in the department that we have. And I think the financial resources that come with being a part of the main conference like the Big Ten, I think really rises the entire department. I think you're seeing it in all the support for the student athletes that we get. You're already seeing it. I'm personally thrilled when I saw the original football schedule that came out before Oregon and Washington also joined. had us going to Michigan to play football. I don't know if you remember that first football schedule that came out. And I went to my wife. I was like, we're going to the big house. Like, we're taking that weekend off. We're going. And I think we're all thrilled to be part of it. I'm personally excited about the opportunities that exist. And hopefully someday there will be Big Ten men's volleyball. You have Penn State and Ohio State and USC and UCLA. You're talking about some of the most marquee, big name programs in the sport of men's volleyball. I know it's a challenging time to add sports right now with a lot of uncertainty in the general landscape, but hopefully when we move past this, we'll have an opportunity to beat Big Ten men's volleyball.
All right, John, let's close here. I did some digging. I understand your undergraduate degree from UCLA was in microbiology and molecular genetics. I'm really glad for you. The whole coaching thing did work out. If it didn't, what was the future for John Speraw after college?
It was medicine. I was working in the hospital at UCLA as I was an undergrad, and after I graduated, it was about a year and a half of post-graduation. I was working in the hospital, and that's when I went to Al Skates, and I said, hey, I'm not so sure about this medicine thing. I was so procrastinating taking the MCATs, Rick. I just couldn't get myself back into organic chemistry. And so he said, hey, yeah, I'll help you out. And Al really kicked off my coaching career. In fact, he got me my very first coaching job, and it was with USA Volleyball. So I've been doing the UCLA USA thing all these years. I owe a lot to Al for being able to help me do that. But yeah, it worked out pretty well for me, Rick. I'm pretty excited about where we're at.
Yeah, he can figure out genetic structures. He can figure out rotations. He is once again a national champion. UCLA head coach John Speraw. John, it's been great to get to know you a little bit. Congrats again to you and the team. And, of course, best of luck with the U.S. national team this summer in Paris.
Hey, thanks so much. And hopefully we'll have more conversations down the road.
Take you around the Big Ten. Look at the year-end Women's Lacrosse Award winners. No doubt. Izzy Skane, third time she is the Attacker of the Year. Cassidy Spillis, like Skane, a unanimous selection. Spillis as the Midfielder of the Year. Maddie Burns of Michigan is the Defender of the Year. Sydney Manning is the Freshman of the Year. And Kelly Amonte-Hiller, once again leading her team to both the regular season and tournament titles, is the Coach of the Year. Speaking of Big Ten tournaments, we're getting ready for the softball tournament. First pitch Wednesday in Iowa City. Michigan is in search of its 11th. That's the most all-time. Minnesota has won 5, Northwestern 3, and the Iowa Hawkeyes, the quote-unquote home team this weekend, have also won a pair of Big Ten softball tournament championships. More from Sammy Nettling as we dive deep into that bracket and the top 4 seeds. Northwestern, the number 1 overall seed. You were prescient. You said all season long, as good as the rest of this league is, the pitching for Northwestern and the consistency of this lineup makes them just a tick better than everybody else.
Yeah, when you've won 8 straight Big Ten series dating back to last year, right? I mean, that was the biggest difference for me, was the consistency, the level of play they were able to compete at day in and day out. And yes, of course, Miller in the circle. I do think she's likely going to be, potentially pitcher of the year. She has been so dominant, and yet we saw her stumble a little bit this weekend. They effectively won Friday's game 1 against the Hoosiers without Ashley Miller in the circle, and so I also think that's an underrated part of their game that I think even myself haven't really touched on a lot this year is the step up that we've seen from a Cunningham, the freshman, or a Cammie Henry, the 5th year, to really shore up that element of their game. And then offensively, the numbers don't jump off the page, right? But they are just so consistent at finding a way to get on base, and they're just so confident that someone's going to step up. Situational hitting 1 through 9. We've seen it time and time again, just a different bat continue to produce.
That's the rarity with this team on a night where Candace Robinson has a bad afternoon. Kelsey Nader steps up. If both of those struggle, Zedak and Katie have big nights. Donahue, Emma Ray, every single player in that lineup, and we touched on so many with Kate Drohan, can beat you in so many different ways. That's why the Wildcats are the number 1 overall seed. Now, Michigan's the number 2. They took it down to the final day of the regular season. They had won 14 straight before they finished with 2 losses on Saturday and Sunday against Ohio State. Still, you have to feel like Michigan found something late in the year that makes this team really dangerous.
Absolutely, and almost a blessing in disguise, right? To take that loss, get the streak out of the way, and be able to press the reset button for this week. Because I do think depth-wise, there is not a team deeper and more just elite in the circle when they play their best. Durkowski and Hain, they struggle with free passes. We know that. But when they are on, they are lights out in the circle. And then the turnaround, you have to tip the cap to the offense. I mean, they have just been night and day from the non-conference play to the conference play, 1 through 9, a really, really strong, balanced approach from a relatively young Wolverine team right now.
And I think Thole has been really good at the plate, too. She's a player that right now opposing pitchers don't really want to try to test.
I mean, you talk about a senior that just played the part, right? Waited her turn, didn't really see consistent playing time until her junior year, and has really stepped up to be that linchpin senior leader, right? 14 plus home runs on the year, and has been a catalyst. And now she has some talent, some extra bats around her with that coveted class of first years as well.
Rutgers has not been a team that's been the first off your tongue when you start to talk about threats in the Big Ten softball tournament. We heard Kate Drohan mention the Scarlet Knights. This is, in fact, the kind of team that can make a run in Iowa City.
They've been so steady throughout conference play, and you know, I really think the flip side argument from the Wolverines, right? We know they're going to be an offense-heavy team. Every Coach Butler squad seems to be, but in the circle, I really think Boyd has been the difference maker for them. She is second in the conference in total wins on the year and has just really elevated that part of the game in particular. And then you have to talk about Morgan Smith. Yes, also compliments Boyd in the circle, but is 19 home runs on the year, I mean, is another name, another spot in the lineup that you just have to respect.
If Rutgers plays Ohio State, should the Buckeyes advance past Wisconsin, what a matchup that would be in the second round with a Buckeye team that's feeling really good after beating Michigan twice to close the regular season. And finally, Nebraska's the 4 seed. At points this year, they look like world beaters. At points this year, they look like they could get beaten by anybody in the world.
Yeah, I just think this Husker team has been so resilient. That is the perfect word for them after all of the adversity, all of the injuries that have plagued them this year. I mean, talk about a team that lost six players to season-ending injuries, 2 in the circle. They have Caitlin Neal, a position player, taking innings at some point this year, right? And yet they're finding a way to win because they are just have this next man up. Give me everything you've got today, and we'll figure out the rest. I just really think you have to respect what Nebraska was able to do to finish out this year. Yeah,
they've won a tournament title recently as well, so you know how to get it done as they look to do it twice in the past 3 seasons. There is just enough time left for the crystal ball portion of the show. When we return, Sammy looking into the future and predicting who she expects to be named Coach, Player, and Pitcher of the Year. You can see every single pitch of the 2024 Big Ten softball tournament presented by DirecTV right here on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. The festivities get started Wednesday, noon Eastern, 11 Central from Iowa City. Awards are also announced on Wednesday, but we can't wait that long. We're very impatient. So Sammy is here. She's been rubbing the crystal ball, predicting exactly what's going to happen when those awards are released on Wednesday. Let's start with Player of the Year, and I have a feeling this is a player that we've already spoken about at length over the course of this show.
Yeah, when you get named to the national top 25 finalists for Player of the Year, you have to be your favorite for conference Player of the Year, and that's Jess Oakland, right? I mean, we've talked about her all season long. She continues to just be such a threat in the box, right? Just tremendous exit velocity. She has 19 home runs on the year, an incredible batting average. She has such balance and vision in the box, and just is so tough to get out, right? She has incredible plate coverage, can hit to all 3 fields of the field, and yeah, I don't think there's anyone else that can take that spot.
Her numbers are crazy. I mean, 457. You mentioned the 19 homers. That means that her OPS, on-base plus slugging, is nearly 1.5. That is a ludicrous number, a terrific season so far for Jess Oakland. Not many pitchers have had a chance to get her out this year. Some pitchers, though, have done better than others. Who is the likely pitcher of the year?
Yeah, also not a surprise. My pick is Ashley Miller. I know she struggled a little bit this past weekend, but I think it was an anomaly. I really do. I think she's been so tough throughout non-conference and conference play. She just has an incredible, she has the K presence, but she just feeds her defense at times. A drop ball pitcher with just a tremendous off speed. Reminds me a little bit of Danielle Williams in terms of just the way that she's able to tunnel those 2 two pitches where you really cannot differentiate them. And I just think she's been an incredible add. Has to be recognized as a massive reason why the Cats have three-peated.
And lastly, Coach of the Year. Yes, there are more than 3 awards to be announced on Wednesday. We're focusing on 3 of the main ones. Northwestern won it all, but I don't think it's just as easy as saying, well, it has to be Kate Drohan. It may be, but I mean, Rutgers is a great story. What Rhonda Revelle did after all those injuries at Nebraska. Who do you think will be named Coach of the Year?
I do think it'll be Coach Drohan because they didn't just repeat in a year that it was expected, right? There was no one that thought this team would be back in title contention after the youth that they brought into the program and just the roster turnover, right? You lose 5 fifth-year seniors, and yet you're still a back-to-back-to-back champion. You have to tip your cap to what Coach Drohan did.
And Boyd redshirting as well, which we touched on. Thank you, Ashley Miller, for coming in. Pretty nice year inside the circle. Well, the Big Ten softball tournament does get started on Wednesday, and we will be here for all of it. For Sammy Netling, I'm Rick Pizzo. As always, we appreciate you hanging with us on this edition of Big Ten Today.